Okay, so today is the start of a new series. I'm gonna pull up the randomizer here. We just did player piano, so we'll get rid of that. And we'll see what's next. Ideally, I would get something like cello or flute or, one of the solo instruments that has a lot of repertoire. Okay, double bass. Nice. We're going to be working reverse chronological with these five scores. The first one is a piece from just 2 years ago called Gray Black, Gray Yellow by composer Barak Perelman. So Perelman, this is his website. It's very minimalist. And I discovered his scores not very long ago. There's he has pre-comp on his website that looks kind of like this. And he has a handful of recordings on YouTube. This recording is just on his website. Let me pull up the score to it. This is one of those composers who, all of his stuff is available for free online. Um, Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have their scores. And also, I don't there's not much information about them. I'm assuming uh, they're they're based in the UK or something, because that's where I see a lot of this type of super minimalistic music. You can see that the score is just a bunch of note heads that written as whole notes, ranging from it's actually only three notes. It's B, A, or G, which I guess represents the three colors in the title. It's dedicated to a British composer, Clarence Barlow, which is sort of confirming my suspicion that this is a UK composer. Okay, he taught at UC Santa Barbara, so this may be an American composer, but also taught at the Hague Royal Conservatoire. So he's a pioneer of electronic music, and his dates are 45 to, of course, 2023. This is dedicated in memory of him, so written in the same year of his death. Okay, I think we can just give this a listen. The link to the recordings in the video description if this kind of thing interests you. And if you're a double bassist, maybe this does interest you. If you're programming something, this looks very easy to learn, but there's also no performance notes, so it's very unclear how it's supposed to be played other than this recording we have. Okay, so yeah, this piece is very, very restrained, obviously. It takes about 8 minutes to play through this one page. And this is a really good performance, like a really good interpretation, which I'm assuming is what the composer wanted. Like there was some sort of direction going on behind the scenes. And it seems like each note is held as long as possible in a single bow stroke. And it really shows off the physicality of the bass. One thing I always find really striking, seeing solo bass stuff is like how short the bow is and sort of and also how much weight needs to be behind the bow just to get the string going. And that sort of physicality is really here. The register in sort of the middle of the bass is kind of interesting to listen to over such a long period of time. It's like a lot more rich than the same register in a cello on a cello, where it's like would be a little bit flabbier. Um, and then another interesting thing about it was like this idea of never going from A to G, always going from either B to A or B to G or the opposite. It really emphasized the B, and even though there were only three notes in it, it really sounded like it was in B minor, which I thought was really interesting. I thought it would sound like it might be in G major, but no, it doesn't. It really doesn't at all. And it has this sort of sad, like plaintive quality to it. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If you're not used to this sort of music, I hope that this is inspiring for you. This sort of thing is harder to perform than it looks. I mean, you really have to have a mature approach and you have to have a familiarity with this sort of performance practice. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine solo bass piece to kick this off. Maybe it would be good to program it with some of Barlow's music or like other minimalistic double bass stuff. Okay, that's all I got for this one. Next, we'll be listening to some Rebecca Saunders. Today I'm going to be listening to a solo bass piece by Rebecca Saunders. It's called Fury, and it's from 2005. First, I just want to look at some of the extended techniques. It's a double bass with five strings, and its scordatura is low G flat, and then E, A, so those are normal, then C sharp and G. There's some specific directions on how the sol ponticello should sound. So it seems that she wants a more like malto sol ponticello where um, there's like a loss of typical tone and depending on the dynamic, it may have some sort of noise component. So this is like a very specific like coloring she wants. We got quarter tone accidentals. She's opting for the arrowed ones instead of the more typical ones. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. She wants like interference or like beating between close intervals. So if you see like a almost unison double stop, obviously there should be some control there over the beating. And yeah, it seems like a lot of these techniques are ordinary techniques, but she takes some care to like specify that it should be, particularly noisy, um, or violent or whatever. Nice. It's a short little piece. It's about 6 minutes, it seems. Okay, Rebecca Saunders bio. Okay, she's a Berlin-based British composer born in 67 and a leading representative of her generation of composers. Interest in sculptural and spatial properties of sound. Studied with Nigel Osborne and Wolfgang Rimm. We've covered one piece by Rimm back in the orchestra series. Winner of numerous prizes. honorary doctorate from University of Huddersfield. She's done some collaborative work with choreographers and written pieces for specific architectural spaces and stages. She has written a series of solo and duos for specific performers. This is from 2013 onward, so the piece we're listening to predates this practice she mentions, and then she lists a bunch of ensembles, Asko Schoenberg, Arditi, Ice, Ensemble Research. These are all very big. Then a couple symphony orchestras at the end of the list there, and of course many prizes. So she's a very decorated composer at this point. And yeah, she has some photos here. I like the layout of her website. It's really thoughtful. Link to the recording is in the video description. And if you like this piece, I should mention there is a sequel, which is for double bass and chamber ensemble. It's just called Fury 2. Um, Although I have the score for that one, we're not going to be getting to it in this series, but I encourage you to have a look at it. Um, I am less familiar with this one, so I'm excited to get into it. Okay, so I listened to this Ensemble Music Fabrique recording. This is from the lockdown tapes. Um, and yeah, the low G flat is a really interesting component of the piece. It definitely adds a lot to the sound world of it. Even though it makes it a little bit less accessible for performers, I think it's a cool idea. And yeah, a lot of like violent glissandi and batuto things. It's really challenging to read through because of all the indications. You can see it's a lot to parse through as a performer, all the different techniques you have to switch from. But then when you actually look at it in performance, it's very organic and clearly there's a lot of understanding there about the mechanics of it. It's surprising how loosely this performer treated some of the rhythms. I feel like it really sounded a lot more rubato than what's on the page. Um, I'm curious if the composer is happy with that sort of interpretation, if it's one of those things where a lot of the stuff is so fast that you kind of just have to fake it, and that's the energy behind it, or maybe it's like actually supposed to be as strict as you see. Pretty cool. Didn't overstay its welcome. The next piece, I think we're going back to Julio Estrada piece. This piece by Julio Estrada from 1985, assuming I can find a recording. So yeah, until then, happy listening, and yeah, I'm excited to get further into this repertoire here. Okay, so a bit of a change of plans today. I wanted to look at this Julio Estrada piece, but I can't find any complete recordings of it. There's a few excerpts of it on Bandcamp and Spotify, but nothing close to the whole thing. So I think we're going to move on to James Tenney. It's going to be our first James Tenney piece. Basically, he has these series of postal pieces, which are scores that are written on postcards. He wrote them between 1965 and 1971. Um, you can find, like, this PDF I have here is a book about James Tenney by Larry Polanski, and there you can find all of these scores. Today we're looking at the one for double bass called Beast, which was written on the 30th of July, 1971. Tuned the E string down to E flat, this piece begins with a unison on the A string, open A string, and stopped E flat string. The graph indicates changes in frequency of the beats produced by these two strings sounding together as the pitch of the lower string is very gradually changed. A perfect unison would have a beat frequency 0 or whatever. Yeah, that does say 0. The segmented fourth between the open A string and the open E flat string should have a beat frequency of approximately 16 beats per second. The sound should be as continuous as possible and very resonant, though not necessarily loud. The peaks of this, so this is the waveform they're reading. And on the peak of each waveform, it's hard to see in this scan, but there is a number, which I believe refers to the number of beats. So for example, this first small glissando, you're going from 0 beats to 1 beat per second, then back down, then up to probably 3 beats per second. And then the high point of the piece is 16 beats per second. And that's the farthest you will move the pitch on the E flat string. It's the farthest you'll move it. So, and then underneath he has the durations. So here's 1 minute. Don't know if you can see my cursor in OBS, but the ending is 7 minutes into the piece. And it's written for Boal Neidlingen. Not sure if I can read that correctly, but yeah, Buell Neidlinger. So this American bassist. Let's just look at his bio and James Tenney's, and then give this a listen. This is our first Tenney episode, so I want to make sure we cover all the bases here. So Neidlinger was born in 1936, died in 2018, and he worked with a number of pop and jazz performers, most prominently Cecil Taylor in the 50s and 60s. Tenney was born just 2 years earlier than the bassist, 1934, died in 2006. He's a composer that I was really into when I started my doctorate. Unfortunately, none of my teachers were very into him, and none of my colleagues were. But I think he's like a really admirable kind of jack of all trades composer. Um, he does stuff with spectral music, microtonal music, tuning systems, process music, algorithmic composition, just intonation. He worked at Bell Labs for a number of years with Max Matthews and was a pioneer of computer music in America. So his employment of spectral techniques were not really associated with the spectral movement in France. It's sort of something that people have ascribed to his computer music influenced acoustic pieces, which is what he's best known for. Um, Fluxus was the word I was looking for. So he was also active in the Fluxus movement in the 1960s. And I'm assuming this is where he would have met the bassist that this piece is dedicated to. But of course, as we've seen in this score, the content of this piece is very much about like sound perception and has a certain affinity to like electronic music. He gave a Fortran workshop. If you don't know, Fortran is like one of the first programming languages. But he gave a workshop on that to Fluxus artists, Steve Reich, Namjoon Paik, Dick Higgins, Jackson Maclow, Joseph Bird, Phil Corner, Allison Knowles, and Max Newhouse. So, and he was one of the 4 people to play in Steve Reich's Pendulum Music, which is probably the most famous process piece by Reich. And Tenney also performed with Harry Partch in in a production of one of Partch's pieces. And he performed with Philip Glass, Steve Reich, John Cage. I think Tenney was a pianist, but could do other performance art things. This piece, these postal pieces are sort of the start of this larger period in Tenney's career, which he's most famous for, which is his sort of instrumental music period, where he did all these instrumental pieces influenced by electronic music and psychoacoustics, things like that. The postal pieces are super popular. Some of them more popular than others. Also, he has this piece called Saxony for saxophone and tape, which I think is probably his most performed work. He also has orchestral pieces, which hardly anyone knows anything about, but they're really good. Um, and yeah. Okay, so if you can't tell, I'm excited to introduce you to this composer. I haven't listened to this piece in a long time, and this is actually the first time I've actually like looked at the score in detail, and I like it. I like how it's laid out. Yeah, let's give it a listen with your best headphones here. Nice. So this is a cool double bass piece. I think if it was like a electronic piece and it was just like two sine tones, it wouldn't really work. But because the bass has such a rich um like harmonic profile on its lower strings, you get these two harmonic series butting heads against each other, and you get all kinds of crazy effects, especially in the second half of the piece when the beating is more pronounced. You get like really weird, like glissandi almost sounding things in both directions. It's very strange. Um, and also you have the rhythm of the bassist just trying to hold this note and switching their bow position is really adds a lot. It's really texturally complicated and kind of fascinating. If you like this piece, I would get to know some of the other postal pieces. I'll be getting to them probably in other series. A lot of them are for solo instruments, so whenever whenever I'm doing a series on a solo instrument, there'll be a chance that I'll do one of these. They're all super different, and they all are conceptual like this, something that you can fit on a single postcard. And I think they're kind of fun because they're all dedicated to specific performers, so I think some are dedicated to composers, but they're gifts basically. He was not commissioned to write these pieces. He just did them for fun as an expression of gratitude to performers he's worked with, and they're some of his most performed works. So I think that's kind of a nice legacy to leave behind of like being a community member, you know. Um, Honestly, it's kind of inspiring, I think. I think more artists should do stuff like this. It's a sign that you have a healthy art seed. Okay, so I'll get off my pedestal here, and next session is going to be this piece by Jacob Druckman, which it's called Valentine, and it's from around the same time. It's actually a really cool little piece of bass repertoire. So, um, yeah, something completely different in a few days from now. Okay, so today's piece is a bass piece by Jacob Druckman called Valentine, and I'm really excited to share it. And I don't even think I'll be using OBS today. I'm just gonna record this on my phone and edit it tomorrow or something. But yeah, I have a physical score, and I was just looking at it now because I have time, and I figured I might as well just share it because I don't know, I don't want to wait around and do it tomorrow. Here's the score. This thing was written in 1969, and it's a very gaudy looking front cover. This is like landscape tabloid paper. It doesn't get much more 60s than this. So if you just look at the score, it is like almost Lockman levels of detailed, and there's a lot of extended techniques going on. There's like, on this first page, it's mostly pizzicato playing and playing with a timpani mallet and some vocal stuff. I don't think there's any bowed notes on this first page, and it's all measured out in seconds. You can see at the top there. Here's sort of the way that he lays out his performance notes. So he has a nice big note at the start. Then he shows you how the staff is read. So you have the time, what he calls analog notation. You have the time in seconds at the top. There's a small, like 75% scale staff for the voice, and it's male voice or low voice the whole time. Then you have the normal staff for pitched stuff, and then you have this 2-line staff at the bottom, which is all the stuff that is below the bridge, and there's then a ledger line for the body of the bass. And here, any like circular note head that's unfilled is bowed. If it's filled in, it's pizzicato, which is most of the notes. And there's rhythmically, it's a bit flexible. It's sort of like a Barrio sequenza kind of proportional notation stuff. You got all these techniques here. Square note heads are for timpani stick stuff, and triangle note heads are for like slamming your left hand finger down onto the fretboard. And then he has like some specific techniques. This one here with the angled, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, all three of these are interesting, but one of them in the middle here is like inserting the timpani stick between two of the strings and then rapidly alternating between them. So that's a cool little notation. It stood out when I was reading this. You're going to have some IPA stuff for the voice. All of these sounds are very pronounceable in English, except for maybe the glottal stop. And yeah, there's like some vocal stuff there. You have to remember, double bass is not a particularly loud instrument, and these are not particularly loud effects, but that actually works really well with an untrained voice. I mean, it's all just very cool. I'm even noticing on the first page here that there's like an instruction in the score that you have to read out loud, and it's kind of meta. That's what kind of made me want to revisit this immediately, because it's just such a funny thing to ask the performer to do, also right in the beginning of the piece. And now the whole thing is not that many pages. It's maybe like 8 pages of score, but it's just so dense with notation that you really don't have the option of sight reading it. You really have to kind of learn it. You got to learn the thing. And the whole thing's about 9 minutes. So I'm going to give this a listen. I encourage you to click on that link in the video description and listen to it yourself. And if you're a bassist, hopefully this really inspires you. I'll see you in 10. Okay, so my thoughts on this one, just quickly listening through it with the score. It's really theatrical. I like how theatrical it is, and the use of the voice throughout the piece. And I like that that sort of like theatrical speaking stuff, and how it fits the form of the piece. Really well notated. It's kind of like a gold mine of techniques, and out of the pieces we've listened to so far in the series, it's the most bassy. Like I felt like these techniques were really tailored to the instrument and performer, and uh, they just seamlessly bled into one another. There was like this really nice marriage of different techniques, and the physicality of it was really cool. It just looked incredibly fun and rewarding to play and sounded like it. And I think this is a strong contender for the most interesting bass piece in the series, and it's like almost the oldest one, or it might be the oldest one. Yeah, it's 1969, so I think it's a really really original work, and you don't hear stuff like this every day. So um, if you're writing for solo bass, I feel like this is a must listen. And yeah, um, I didn't really go over Druckman's bio. I'll just leave that to you because I think this is the only score of his I have. Um, I actually got this score in a free bin of a library, like a music library. Otherwise, I don't think I ever would have came across it. So it's kind of a nice discovery, and maybe I should get more into Jacob Druckman's music. I'm not sure. By the sound of this piece, he probably has a lot of good percussion stuff, I would imagine. So, um, yeah, that's that one. The last piece in the series is going to be a piece for bass and electronics to sort of make up for the uh, lost piece, the Julio Estrada piece. I couldn't find a recording, so we're going to go listen to some Yoshihiro Kanno to meet the 5 pieces that I promised. And that'll be it for the bass series. Okay, so today's going to be the final piece in the bass series. I'm listening to a piece by Japanese composer Yoshihiro Kanno for double bass and tape. And this score I just downloaded off of his website. It's freely available. I found a YouTube performance, and link to that is in the video description. And I think we listened to another piece of his with electronics for violin, piano, and electronics. Similarly, uh, he notates his electronic sounds when it has like definable pitches. And then I mean, if there are other sounds that can be described with words, he'll just describe it with words. So it's very practical, like simple way of showing the electronics. It looks like the double bass has a lot of like artificial and natural harmonics. So when things have to be notated at pitch in higher register, he just has a separate staff for treble clef, and that's seems to be present throughout the score. Um, he even flips into it when the bass just has high pitches, so that's kind of weird. But in certain circumstances, kind of nice, I guess. The title of this piece is A Pavilion of Sand on his website, but on the YouTube video, it's called A Tower of Sand, um, which is a very strange, evocative title for a double bass piece. Um, this is what I'm talking about. So there's going to be some like sounds in the electronics that are better described with, in this case, just um, what would you call them? Automatopoeia? Is that the word? Kano's pieces for me have been kind of hit and miss, although we've only listened to 2 of them. Um, and yeah, I guess I'm somewhat excited for this one. I don't have headphones, so hopefully it's not too obnoxious to anyone in my vicinity. Uh, and yeah, if you want to hear my opinions on this thing, just wait through this brief transition.
Okay, so this is a nice contrast to a lot of the other bass pieces we've been looking at, which are a bit more like aggressive. This is just very lyrical, um, like slightly processed with reverb, bass, melody kind of stuff, and the electronics actually don't resemble what's in the score at all. They're more like atmospheric, wine glass sounds and rumbling timpani and tam tam type sounds. Um, Heavily processed with reverb, so that's very kind of like cavernous. And yeah, it's very effective. I think a lot of performers would really latch onto this because it's challenging in a way that requires you to like really make your instrument sing. And it's got a couple little like extended technique-ish things in it, like artificial harmonics and harmonic glisses and things like that. And I like the moment where the electronics back off. Like you get this really long opening, and then the electronics just back off, and the performer keeps playing, and it's sort of like this continuous melody. There's no real break in the melody because it's like some sort of mode of limited transposition. But there are breaks in the electronics, and I like that sort of contrast. Um, So yeah, that concludes the double bass series. I think these five pieces were a really good collection. If I saw a concert of them, I would be really stoked. And I've never seen any of these pieces live. I don't think any of them get performed a lot. And over the years, like the bass studios that I've seen, none of them are very encouraging of contemporary music, unfortunately. So I think this is probably just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot of good bass repertoire. And if you're a bassist who's like complaining about having no rep, I mean, maybe you're just not looking very hard. Um, because all of these pieces were great, in my opinion. Um, yeah. Until next time, happy listening, and we'll see what uh, is our next series when we get there.